Hi, Dan Pressure here for International Living. I'm one of the dozen or so old hands here on the IL community page, the International Living community page, answering the questions that you guys are firing at us here on the page. Interesting questions, and I want to read you just a couple of the most current questions with some of the answers that our experts are supplying here. I'll try to do this once every week or two just to keep you up to date with the most current questions that are being asked here on the International Living community page. I'm going to start with one by Maya Brooks. Maya Brooks asks, on average, how much can I expect to spend a month to live comfortably in Spain? And this question is answered by our Spain expert, Glinda Prentice. She says, hi, Mia. Costs can vary a lot depending on where you are and what you consider a comfortable lifestyle, but let me give you some sample numbers. If you're renting a small apartment long-term in cities like Barcelona, Madrid, Bilbao, Malaga, and others, expect to pay rent in the $900 to $1,200 range per month. In smaller cities, this figure can drop quite a bit. For instance, in Cuenca, about 2 hours or less from Madrid, there are long-term apartment rentals starting at about €350 a month. That's about US 455. And Glenna goes on to go into much more detail about a lot of other places in Spain and a lot of other price points. Here's a question from Braden Watson. Braden asks, is permanent residency in Uruguay easy to obtain? This question is answered by our resident Uruguay expert, David Hammond. He starts out by saying, for people interested in getting residency for the purposes of living in Uruguay, the process is more straightforward than most places. What is perhaps most attractive about Uruguay, their residency process, is that you don't have to wait for final residency approval before you're allowed to live and work in the country. David goes on into much greater detail, several paragraphs on Uruguay's visa and residency requirements. Let's see. Here's one by Ruth Smith. She asks, where are the best places to see wildlife in Panama? And this one gets answered by somebody that a lot of international readers and subscribers know, Jessica Ramesh, who is our expert in Panama. She says, dear Ruth, it depends. As Panama is one of the most biodiverse nations in the world, you can see wildlife in nearly every province. Our wildlife tends to be small, no massive animals here like elephants. There are some 900 bird species, however, so Panama is famous among birders. And she goes on to explain all of the wildlife species and the specific places that you can find them in Panama. Many, many more questions like that here on the International Living community page. Browse around, dive in, take a look. We have a lot of different categories for you to ask your questions about. As I said, a dozen or so experts firing you back the answers. Dig in there and ask a question of your own. We'll look forward to answering it, and I'll have more next week here from the IL community page.